when you see a strong person beating up a small person, a weak person, a woman on the street, something comes out inside you. You feel this sense of protection. You feel, I want to do something about this. That's the Congress. That is the idea of the Congress. And you will feel it in you. And when I was your age, my starting point was how I viewed the world. And as far as I was concerned, I understood the world and everybody else didn't quite get it like we did. And then when you work, when you go into details, you find that actually perspectives that you might not agree with are valuable. They exist because of certain circumstances the other person is undergoing. And there is always a conversation possible. And I think that's something that has to be done in the 21st century. We can't afford to have the type of wars that we had 50, 60, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, because we would basically destroy the planet. I used to think that simply improving the economic position of a person, simply transforming India economically, will result in a reduction of caste thinking. I don't hold that view anymore. No. It won't. I'm also the type of person who understands that my view or what I think is not what should drive the future of 1.3 billion people. My view is my view, and yes, I have certain opinions, but really what is interesting to me is what is the view of the Indian farmer. He understands agriculture much better than I do. Who am I to tell him that this is my vision for you? My job is to go to him and say, what do you need? How can we help you? What is your vision for agriculture? How would you like to help empower your country? How would you like to ensure that the food you're growing, the rice you're growing or the wheat you're growing reaches, these young kids? And the surprising thing to me is, which is something that I find people underestimate. You can go to people and you might think, oh, they're not educated, they don't have a good experience, they don't understand the world. You're wrong. I have met many, many policy experts on agriculture. And I can tell you, your average farmer sitting in an Indian farm will take on that person and teach him about agriculture. So if you go to the Indian farmer today and say, listen, do you feel supported by the Indian government? The answer is no. हिंदी में नियत की बात होती है. अगर नियत साफ होती है वो समझ जाता है. Sorry, do हिंदी. अगर नियत साफ होती है तो समझ जाता है. If the intention is right, if the feeling is right, the person understands. So a lot of politics is about that. Do you actually believe that Indian agriculture is something that supports India, builds India, projects Indian power? Or do you believe that Indian agriculture is a drain? The current government believes that Indian agriculture can be replaced. When you speak to them, their conversation is, well, you know what, if our farmer can't grow the wheat, we can buy the wheat from elsewhere. But that's not the only role of the Indian farmer. The Indian farmer is integrated in our society. He does much more than just grow wheat. Today I went to the Houses of Parliament. And, in one of the speeches, the gentleman said, it hit me. I hadn't really thought of it like that. The gentleman said, this is the room in the British Parliament from where India used to be run. I frankly was speechless. I'd never conceptualized that my country could be run from a room in another country. How can that be? But that's the reality. And the organization and the idea that fought the superpower and beat them and allowed me today to go to that room and say, actually, it's quite interesting that there are 10, 12 Indian MPs who are helping run Britain from the very same room. I mean, with no disrespect, this is a magical thing. But the important thing to understand from the Indian perspective is that whatever we've achieved so far has been achieved on the back of all of India's people. It hasn't been done by a few people. The whole of India is sacrificed to get us where we have arrived. And so to me, it goes without saying that if the whole of India is sacrificed to bring us where we are, the whole of India has to benefit from what we have become. And you cannot now say that, sorry, we are not going to give benefits from this great transformation to tribals. We are going to exclude minorities. We are going to exclude Dalits. We are going to exclude farmers. And oh, by the way, we'll also exclude women. You can't do that. The thing to understand is, youngsters, there's a crisis in India. There's a full-blown crisis in India, and it's called the job crisis. And the Indian state and the Indian government is not accepting it. It is simply saying it doesn't exist. And I'll give you a little bit of an idea. 50,000 jobs every 24 hours in China. 450 jobs in 24 hours in India. That's a catastrophe. Okay, so how are you going to develop these jobs? These jobs are going to come from a couple of places. They're going to come from small and medium businesses. They're going to come from revitalizing, re-energizing agriculture, connecting the farm to the table or to your dining rooms. They're going to come from infrastructure, construction of low-cost houses. That's where they're going to come from. But you have to organize people to say, okay, the first thing you got to do is you got to explain to people there's a problem. I think the biggest instrument against corruption is the right to information. The right to information is like a arrow that goes right into the heart of the Indian bureaucratic machine, bureaucratic political machine. And that's something that we developed, and unfortunately that's something that has been weakened and destroyed. It's interesting that it took 3 years for the Lokpal to be put in place. That's also an institution that we conceptualized and we put in place. The third really powerful thing you can do to fight corruption is decentralization. And the idea of Panchayati Raj, the idea of bringing governance closer to people, that's a very powerful thing. How many of you in this room are proud of the debate in the Indian Parliament? You see? Now, why is the debate in the Indian Parliament of such low quality? Why do you think you have hundreds of experienced politicians, very capable people, and then you look at the Parliament and the level of debate, the level of conversation isn't what you expect. There's a lot of shouting. And then notice another thing. If you looked at the same Parliament in the 50s, and you read the quality of the debate in the 50s and the 60s, you look and you say, my God, what's going on? What has happened? So why this puzzle? No. The real reason is that today members of Parliament do not have power. They do not have power to make laws. Today laws are made by the Prime Minister's office, by the ministers, and by a set of bureaucrats.
So it means that our constitution is very poor.
No, it means that we need to make our members of Parliament actually powerful. We need to actually turn around. We need to actually turn around and say, the fact that you're sitting in this house means that you will have lawmaking power. The moment you give them lawmaking power, you will see the quality of the debate will climb immediately.